last time we also saw some interesting things over here, mainly this API version 1 admin auth, check if user is admin, and we have these ones that generate for VPN, and then also the admin settings update. Now, since I'm not completely blind on this LedSec, let's be honest here, I'm trying to teach you something, so I have to be kind of prepared. We have to talk about a couple of concepts first. One is API in, which we did last time. So we enumerated what's happening on this API, what kind of endpoints we have, what we can use. And now we would have to go on and see if we can do something with the admin part. I mean, that's the interesting thing. The rest up here is, it's okay, it's all right, I guess. But this is where the fun begins, because this has admin in the name, and usually we want to get access to admin stuff. Now, a big part of such an API is also the JSON syntax. And I think maybe some of you don't know what the JSON syntax is, so let me show you real quick a couple of examples so that we're on the same page and everybody is up to date with what JSON is. We have a very formal, how do you say, I'm not sure how you say it, a very formal, almost mathematical graph explanation of what JSON is or how it works. Now, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's not only used in JavaScript, it's one of the most commonly used formats. Think maybe XML and YAML, then you have also JSON. JSON is mostly used for APIs, for REST APIs nowadays. It's something similar to XML. We can store data into it, and we usually have this curly brackets, then some white space, and then some curly brackets, and we can also have strings or maybe strings, colon, and the value. Now, this is kind of what you would learn if you go to university, and then you would know absolutely nothing. So let's take a look at what the JSON syntax looks like in action. We usually have key value pairs in JSON. So, for example, we have the key name with the value John. So we know for this JSON, maybe it's the JSON representation of a person or of a user, and then we have the name John. Now, because it's JSON, we put it in curly brackets. You want to store a person in JSON, you have these curly brackets, and then you always have these key value pairs like name, colon John, or age, colon 31, etc., etc. Now, the way these REST APIs are going to work is essentially the same. We will write something, we'll request to this endpoint, and it will return us some JSON. By the way, this whole enumeration that we did last time of the endpoints also returned us a JSON. So what you're looking at right here is actually already a JSON. Good. Now that we got the JSON syntax out of the way, we will abuse this API and perform something called an command injection. Command injection is a vulnerability where we can input our own commands into another application. So think, for example, XSS. Cross-site scripting is kind of a command injection where I think it's more of a code injection, but you get the idea. There is some vulnerability, for example, this string copy, where it doesn't, where your input is then executed with a system thing, blah, 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 and then you can exploit this. For example, this is a wrapper for cat, the command line command cat, which lets you read text, and you can pass it a command which will be a file. So if we have this cat wrapper software, we can pass it a file and then it will read the file. But this is where the command injection comes in. If we not only pass the file, but then a semicolon and ls, it will first read the file and then the ls command. So sometimes software is not built to handle this, and then hackers like us can exploit it. I mean, we can go on and on and on to check out what kind of different command injections are available and what kind of vulnerabilities we can get from this. But let's say we have a piece of code in a PHP application which looks like this. So we have shell exec, which is the PHP equivalent of the system command. And let's say we have an application that generates a open VPN file for us based on our username. So if for some reason this username contains a command, we've exploited a command injection vulnerability and can execute whatever commands we want. But what kind of commands do we actually want to execute? We will want to inject a reverse shell. A reverse shell or a bind shell is a kind of a shell, now the chat is in the way, is a kind of shell that we can execute based on some criteria that we want. So for example, we have the classic, that's the reverse shell, where we run a command on our victim to connect back to us so we can open a shell and interact with it, similar to SSH, but it's not SSH. We also can do it the other way around, where instead of having the target machine connect back to us, the target machine can listen and we can connect to it. So with that out of the way, now that we know what we do, what we need to do, what our entire thing has to do is we need to enumerate the API to find some place to inject a command. Then we need to inject the command, which will be a reverse shell, and then we get a foothold on the server. And that's our goal for today, really, actually. We don't want to do anything very crazy. We just want to get access on the server just from exploiting this API. So this means we don't even need to be on the website. We can do everything in our trusty shell. Now I'm gonna put it over here so my face won't destroy it. So first of all, we can see here that we have a couple of endpoints that are kind of interesting. So we have the API admin auth. Check if user is admin. Now, if you recall from last time, we can't just call the API. We actually need to provide another information, which is the cookie. So how do we get the cookie? We open the developer tools, we go to storage, we go to cookies, and then we just copy it. We do it like this and open a new tab. Now I've forgotten how to do it, so let's just grab anything that had the cookie. So something like this. Okay, this is the command style we're looking for. So let's run this, but now we need our current cookie, which is this one, and let's just delete this one because we don't need this one. Let's paste our new. It's the same. Okay, so now we have version 1 of the API. And we're gonna navigate to it. We have boom, version 1. Now this one should look familiar to us. And what we want to do now is check if the user is admin. I doubt it. What does admin say us? Absolutely nothing. Okay, so let's take a look at admin/auth. By the way, this is the API enum part. So let's look at admin/auth. False. Okay, it looks like I am not the admin. Wow, who would have thought that? Okay, let's take a look if we can execute post VPN generate. All right, okay, then we need here to be post instead of get post. And here it was VPN generate, if I recall correctly. Let's grab this, tack, boom, and absolutely nothing happened. Fantastic. Do we get unauthorized? Okay, we get an unauthorized as was to be expected. We are not admin, so why should we have admin possibilities? Maybe we can take a look at this put settings update. Now, usually, and I say this with, what did I want to say? Usually you wouldn't do this all by hand. Maybe you would use like a fuzzing tool or something like that, like wfuzz, or maybe do it with burp or a crawler or something like that. So I'm just doing it by hand so you can see what the process behind it. Usually we'd use just a tool, and I think in future Let's Hacks we'll just go with the tools instead of doing it by hand. So we're basically just trying out every API endpoint, and now we're doing it by hand. Boom. Now we get danger, invalid content type. Okay, so we got some kind of information. It's not always the boring 401. As you can see, we get even a 200, which means we could have permission to access this part. So let's take a look at that with the correct content type. Application JSON, you can see it over here. Content, it wants content type application JSON. So or it at least replies with it, and it's a REST API, so let's tell it to use JSON. So to provide it the data that it wants here, the missing parameter email, we need to supply a JSON data bundle thing. To do that, we paste in the data in here, and now let's hope that I find the correct, okay, perfect. The correct curly brackets, and we want the email because it says that's the missing parameter, it's the email, and we're talking JSON here, so let's do our email. I think it was Zanidd at null. And then let's close it up. Perfect. That should be it. Okay, perfect. It seemed to work, but now it says missing parameter is admin. Okay, let's add a new parameter here in our JSON. This time we call it is admin. So you see how the JSON part from before now comes into how the boring part of the video actually pays out in the end. Fantastic. Now we have the new attribute called is admin with a new value, and I would say we just type in true. I don't know, maybe that works. Okay, it needs to be either 0 or 1. Now we just have to find out, is a 1 a true or not? Let's try it. Usually 1 means true and 0 means false, so let's go with 1. And now it says username Zanidd is admin 1. Okie dokie. Now, I'm not sure this did anything, but luckily for us, we have this API endpoint over here called admin auth, with which we can check if our user is an admin. So maybe Zanidd is now an admin. Let's go with this. So we have our auth command or auth endpoint. Fingers crossed, everybody. True, I'm an admin. Ha! That was kind of too easy, right? We're on admin and we can now run this generate thing. Yeah, right. That was the third one. So this one gave us the admin rights. With this one, we can check if we're admin. And now we can actually do something as admin. So let's go up. This is a pro trick for every lazy Linux admin. Don't ever write your commands more than one. Just go through your history. Let's take a look at what this generate thing does in the first place. Boom. Invalid content type. Okay, we know the drill. Data. Sorry, this one was the header. And we have content type. And we have application /JSON Derulo. Boom. Missing parameter username. Now, I'm not sure. Should we again use just Zanidd? We have our data drill, so we have some JSON with username, and then we paste our username in here. Zack, boom. And we got an invalid error. Okay. Aha! It was a JQ error after all. So we get something here, we get a VPN key. Now the interesting part is if the file gets created with the file name, maybe we can test it so maybe you remember the command injection command code part that I showed you, where it will create a open VPN configuration using our username. If we assume that that's gonna happen, it's just a hunch, we don't know it right now, but we can assume that the file is called test or user, or maybe we can see it somewhere. Maybe we can have actually some kind of confirmation. No, all we can do is just blindly guess. So let's just blindly guess with ID. So this is the command injection part that we looked at before. And as you can see down below, we actually got some command injection. Now that's fantastic because it means that now we can move on to create a reverse shell. Now creating a reverse shell may sound like something that's difficult or hard or maybe even impossible, but I have a nice treat for you, which is the ref shells. What's this? That's a reverse shell generator. Fantastic. All right. Okay, what do we want to have? We need our IP and port. Okay, so how do we find out our IP? Our IP is the one from the tunnel, which is this one. So let's just copy that in here. And then what port do we want to use? Of course, none other than 42069. Obviously. And that's our listener. this is what we run at home or in our shell over here. In here, we have to implement our payload. Now, that can get a bit tricky. Let's just find out what kind of bash stuff we can run. We have a Linux, so, oh, that's a ton of fun stuff. Oh, we can even use C#. So you can, by the way, you can find the link to this website in the description down below. So make sure to check it out. The only thing I don't like here is why does it use SH instead of bash? But the cool thing is we can even have MSF Venom payloads. Okay, I mean, I just saw this one in the preparation part, but I think I'm in love. So let's grab this one. Let's go in our shell. Let's open up a new tab, home, and then write bash. Now, I don't think this is gonna work because it has too many weird symbols. So let's just encode this in base 64. I mean, I could use burp, but why use burp when I have the internet on my side? Now we have our encoded payload. And now all we need to do is tell our command injection to execute it. How do we do that? So we have our first test. Okay, perfect. Then we echo our base 64 data and just tell it to base 64 decode it on the server and run it with bash. And I hope this is gonna work. So if we run this, where's our listener? Here's our listener, and we're in. I am www.data. What's my ID? We saw that before. Can I clear? Of course not. The term is not set. And L gives us like a database, cat database.php. What's in here? Somewhere, I'm guessing somewhere in here we'll find some credentials like user, pass, etc., etc. So where does it get that data? Okay, so it does really do something with the username. So here we have the confirmation that our command injection actually works. What do we have in here? I'm assuming that somewhere in here we have a database configuration. Maybe it's hidden. Okay, it looks like it was hidden. It's a .n. And here we have the database credentials with the username admin. Now, it's just a wild guess. I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, we can try it. Just people are lazy and they use the same password and username for everything. So maybe there is a user called admin on this machine which uses this password. So let's just cat the etc, not the shadow, the pass wd, and grab admin. And we can see there is a user called admin. Fantastic. So maybe the user admin uses this password. So let's just try it, right? SSH admin at 2million.htp. Yes, we trust it. Boom. Oh, okay. So apparently admin reuses their password. Fantastic. Now we are admin. Let's take a look at the groups. Okay, we can we sudo? No, we cannot sudo. But I think we got the user flag. Perfect. So if you don't want to know this flag, just look away. So, but however, we won't do the rest right now. We will keep that for next week. This is a great cliffhanger. How are we going to become root now that we got access, but we're just some kind of fake admin? We aren't even sudo. Next time we're going to dig deep into some Linux specifics and use a lot of Linux commands. So if you have no idea about Linux and Linux commands and bash, you should check out the video on my second channel called 10 Linux commands every new hacker needs to know. So head on over there, check out the video, and see you next week. Bye bye.